Hey, it's Jason Cunningham and welcome back to another edition of Save My Business, proudly presented by Xero. This podcast invites successful business people to share their stories and offer insights to inspire and encourage fellow small and medium-sized business owners. Today's guest is Craig Mathieson, the Managing Director of the Mathieson Group, a board member of the Carlton Football Club and a thoroughbred horse owner. Matho, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Jace.
So, Mr. Matheson, I'm really excited and grateful that you said yes to come on the podcast. Now, I know you did it with a bit of trepidation.
Yes, I don't normally do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm well aware. And we're not really sure whether this will go to air at this point in time, but let's play a game with me. Craig, your upbringing is quite interesting. I look at you across the table as a fellow finance guy. You did a banking and finance degree, is that right?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah, and what made you decide to choose banking and finance at university?
Well, I guess we don't have the choice that our children have today. I look at my kids when they pick subjects, they've got, about 50 subjects to pick from. You either went down the science route or the accounting route. I thought about being an accountant, but to be honest, I thought it was a bit boring for me. And I guess in the late 80s, early 90s, when I guess people remember a real recession, things got very tough. We got a particularly hard time as a family from the bank. And my old man said to me, Craig, if you can work out how banks thought, you're halfway there. But also, more importantly, he said it'll give you a good grounding in business. When you're a banker, you see, the good ones, the bad ones, and you learn what is good and bad. So I went down that path principally because I thought it'd give me a great outlook in business. So, and it was dynamic. Yeah. I always, accounting, you tend to be looking back a bit where, certainly I specialised in property finance. Mm-hmm. It was building things, it was creating things, and every deal was different. Yeah. So, hence why I ended up down the banking route. Okay, so it was really encouraged by your father, who had some struggles, if you like, in the late 1987 through to 93 was really tough. Yeah, we like everybody in the late 80s, early 90s. I guess when we did have the recession we're meant to have, things were tough. We for no fault of our own, never lost a dollar, never broke a covenant, but the bank we're with decided they didn't want to be in the construction industry anymore and give us a hell of a hard time. It was a terrible time really for a lot of families, including us, for really no fault of our own. And Dad wouldn't let me come to work for the family business. Mm-hmm. He said, you have to go away for 10 years and learn, from other people, have a boss. The tricks out of business I would learn at the kitchen table anyway. Yeah. But he said, you've got to go away for 10 years, learn how to have a boss, see good businesses, all the stuff. And then when you come back to the business, I was always coming back to the business, you would have a different skill set to what I had. And at the same time, when you're a family business, you talk business all day long, you sit at the kitchen table, everyone talks about business. So I was learning his tricks anyway, but just to get a broader experience than what I had just going to work for the family. And it's certainly one of the things I'll probably have to deal with going forward in our family office is what I do with our children and the extended kids, because naturally they want to come and work for the family, but they've got to go away and learn for themselves as well.
Oh, gee, I love that. That's a really good start. I mean, what great parenting from your father. Also to be humble enough to know that, he doesn't know everything and he wants you to go out and get, a set of outside eyes.
He probably thinks he does.
Don't say that. But get some outside eyes and then come back in. So where was your first job, Matho?
I went to the Hong Kong Bank as part of my degree for a year in 89. Then I graduated in 90 or 91, whatever it was. And then I went to the ANZ for a year or so in their business bank. And then I got St George Partnership, which is the old Barclays, set up a commercial property lending department. Yep. And I went there. So it's just specialising fundamentally in property development.
Yeah. It's interesting. I graduated from uni, I think it was about 93 or 94. And early on in business, we were in Grattan Street, Grattan Street, Carlton. And I was talking to the guy that had the office next door, and he was telling me it was only 5 or 6 years ago that the bank called in his loan, and he was in a similar situation. And I think it might have even been construction, where he said, I don't know if you know this, Jason, but if you read your loan documents at any point in time, if the bank feels apprehensive about your loan, they can call it in.
Yep.
And that's what happened to him and his father. And they had to sell properties at a fire sale and they lost so much money. Is it a similar sort of situation?
We weren't in the property. We were, of course, our business, well, DMS Glass started in late 85. We were fundamentally, I guess Dad started as was a glazier by trade, but we installed a lot of the windows in a lot of the big buildings around town.
Yeah.
So we got caught as a property decline came through. Obviously, the construction industry as a whole was just copying it. And I think our bank at a particular time lumbered everybody into the same bucket, whether you were breaching covenants or not. So we never breached the covenant. We never lost money. But they said, we just don't want your business anymore. And of course...
So what did you do?
Well, a lot of sleepless nights for Dad. I guess Dad probably shouldered a lot from us, the family, because I would have been only, it's probably 20 then. I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
But we just cut the shit out of everything and limped along and sold things where we had to. And we re-engineered the business a little bit in terms of the glass that we did. And somehow we survived and ultimately thrived to build the business that we did, which we sold in 2007.
And did you sell that to Pilkington?
No, we sold it ultimately to CSR.
Oh, yeah.
And they, CSR bought Pilkington's came on the market.
Yeah.
We were Pilkington's largest supplier. We actually bid for Pilkington's with a private equity firm because we were their largest customer. And somehow we missed it. And I always say it's the best $700 million we never spent. It's ridiculous money. They bought them. Then CSR literally came down the next day and said they wanted to buy us. They bought, we did a deal, and they created what is the Viridian glass business.
Yeah.
And CSR, they'll say themselves, they toasted $1.2 billion in the glass industry and now out of it.
It's interesting. When I turned 21, my mum didn't know what to buy me for my birthday. And I've told this story before, and I don't think I've shared it with you, but growing up, we lived in Essendon, and those of us that live in Essendon, we call it the Toorak of the North, right? Still in the frickin' North. But coming home at the end of grade 5, my mum and dad, my father was at home at 3:45 on a Tuesday, and my father had his own business. He was never at home. And I walked into the kitchen with my sister and my brother. We walked home from primary school, and there's my mum crying, hysterically crying in the kitchen, and my father was consoling her. And I looked up and said, what's going on, Dad? And he said, Jay, the banks have come in. We've lost our business. They're going to take the house. They're going to take our cars. We've lost everything. And I was 10 or 11. My old man must have been 35, And my mum looked up, tears in her eyes. She looked up to me and she said, Jay, the good news is we're going to go and live at Nana Pat's house, right? And you got the good nan and the shit nan. Yeah. Well, Nana Pat was the good nan. She always gave you presents and all that. We moved into a suburb called Pascoe, which is 3 train stations away from Essendon towards Broadmeadows. And I used to think, woe is me, this is not fair. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we meant to live there for 12 months. We lived there for 6 years and a few other things. And Mum and Dad paid off their debt. They, back then, the best part of 40 years ago, they owed $101,000 in debt and had no assets. Paid it off. Anyway, went back into business and then became, quite successful. And then one of our more successful clients today, and as their accountants, I charge them accordingly. But the point of the story is when they started to become successful again, Mum thought, I tell you what I'm going to do. She was at a barbecue with some friends and she said, what should I buy my son for his 21st birthday? And one of Dad's friends said, buy him some shares. And Mum goes, okay, shares, what do you mean shares in what? And he said, shares in a company listed on the stock exchange, etc. She goes, what shares should I buy and how do I do it? He said, you've got to ring up a stockbroker, ring this guy and tell him you want to buy some CSL, which is Commonwealth Serum Laboratory. Yep. He goes, it was government-owned business, it was being privatised, etc. It's flying, it's a great thing. So Mum rings up the broker, and I think they were trading at $5 at the time, right? Rings up the broker, I want to buy some shares, don't know how to do it. What's the name of the shares? She goes, look, There's a 3-letter word, starts with C. She looks into the cupboard, she sees some sugar, and she goes, CSR, right? Now, as you rightfully said, they sort of blew up and all that sort of stuff. I think CSL now is at about $300, and I owned CSR shares for about 8 years, and Mum gave them to me at $5, and I think I sold them at $5.05. So, interesting story. So you sold your family sold the glazier business or the glass business.
It was the old DMS glass.
Yeah, sold that, and then set up a family office.
Yeah, Dad, we sold 50 years Dad had been in the glass business. He started as a glazier, as a 14 or 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And then what happened in 85, which sort of gets interesting, is that Pilkington fundamentally bought the company that Dad worked for, and they shut them down, and they were all unemployed. Mm. So for some reason, and Dad will say, I'm not sure why, the men all came to him. Dad was just a glazing supervisor.
Yeah.
He just went around the building sites, like any normal foreman would do. But all of a sudden, they're all unemployed. Mm. And so in late 85, they came to Dad and they said, we want to start our own shop. And which, all of a sudden, you talk about, you go home, everyone's unemployed, the shit's hitting the fan, how do we put that? We were just working class family.
Yeah.
And DMS Dad said, all right, let's have a go. And while it's called DMS, it's Don Matheson and staff.
Yeah.
And there was Dad and 24 others came with us.
Wow.
And they were the 40%. And that was in 85. And what I think Dad's proud of, and I'm certainly proud of, is that the money they put in for every $10,000 a person invested, and it was whoever put their money in, from the cleaner to the project manager, for every $10,000, when we as a family bought them out in 2006, they got $1 million.
Oh my God.
So for them, and that's not including their dividends and all that sort of stuff. So for 10 grand, they got $1 million. So when we bought them out, just normal working people all got a great check. So and changed lives.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it was that our business was very successful fundamentally because we never really lost anyone. All those people that started with us were there, unless a couple that died, were there at the end.
Yeah,
and that's why why we were so successful, really.
Gee, that's a great story.
And if you talk about losing out, my father, even to this day, when the shit hit the fan in the late 80s, early 90s, had $400 in a Hotham Building Society account, a passbook account, which was the bond for a rental if the shit hit the fan, because we were going to lose everything. Mm. And I think a lot of people outside, when you run your own small business, you don't realise how much you have on the line every week.
Yeah, that story's just blown me away. So obviously your father has been quite influential in shaping you as a person, as a father, and as a business owner. I assume his passion for the Carlton Football Club has rubbed off on you.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the Blue Baggers a little bit later on. But can you share with me what are some of the fundamental guiding principles that your father has passed on to you that you sort of adopt today when looking at business and operating business?
Well, obviously people. We back people. Mm-hmm. We don't, as a business, I think we kept things pretty simple. We really did stick to our knitting sort of thing. I don't think we ever overcomplicated anything. Mm-hmm. People ask me why you're sometimes successful in business. To me, it sounds simple. It's sort of a bit like common sense. Mm. And if you look at the Matheson family, like you've got, obviously my father's been successful, and my uncle is Bruce Matheson, Dad's younger brother, he's a hotelier who's been incredibly successful. Mm. And they've made money independently of each other. Mm-hmm. So, when people say to Dad or Bruce, to them it's just sort of, to be honest, I think it's just common sense. Mm. We don't do anything flamboyant. Mm. We reinvest in our businesses. We don't live grandiose lifestyles or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We just fundamentally stuck to our knitting, I think.
Yeah. So you're saying to me, it's about your people.
People first, always.
Keeping it simple.
Yep.
And sticking to your knitting.
Yeah, and I think you've got to reinvest in your business. We really, if I went through that, and particularly in glass manufacturing, we always buy new machinery. You know, we will always try to be ahead of the pack. We're always growing, because the day you stop growing is the day that everybody starts to catch up.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons when we did sell was Dad was always of the view, what do we do next? Now, we started as a glazing contract, then we became a glass merchant, then we became tougheners, then we had laminating lines and all those sort of things. And then in the end it was double glazing, with the environmentally. But what was next?
Yeah.
How do we keep improving and growing? Because the day you stand still is a day that everybody sort of falls behind you. And
I wonder whether the bank coming in and really tightening the screws had an impact on that. Because back then, I remember when you opened up the store and you told me that the banks really tightened things up and you had to cut costs, reinvent yourself and all that sort of stuff. I wonder
stock was a big thing that we really had to turn stock into cash very quickly. A lot of businesses do carry too much stock. You've got to, invariably, it's not profit that sends you under, it's cash flow.
Yeah.
And I think that's always something we've always been very conscious of, is generating cash.
You yourself, Matho, I believe you're a non-executive director of Shaver Shop, is that right?
Yeah, we bought that with a group. As a small business, I think it had 58 stores, but 3 were only corporate owned, with a group that I buy companies with, about 5 or 6 together. And then we ultimately floated it, 5 or 6 years ago, I think. And I still sit on the board there and still a shareholder. It's a great little business.
Yeah, see, it intrigues me. How many shops are there now?
120 or something, 130.
120 shops selling shavers.
Yep.
And it's a profitable...
Yeah, publicly listed, turns 180 million, makes 16 after tax or something.
Yeah, amazing business.
But but again, it's a bit like we own the same group have a part of Indota business, which is a fantastic business run by a great lady. It's personal grooming is the niche that we pick. Why we like shaving. Like, you're always going to shave, and now there's trends with beards and all that sort of stuff. Run by a fantastic same CEO as when we bought it.
Yeah, right.
He's been there 15 years. Fantastic CEO, but it's the niche, and we thought it was a growing market. Similar within Indota, it's a wellness space run by an amazing woman, very strong management team. Principally, they're all there still.
Yeah.
But it's that little niche that we like, and it's similar to Indota. I think we've got 120 stores in that as well.
Yeah, right. So it's a similar theme. Like, you keep talking about the people, you keep talking about keeping it simple and sticking to your knitting.
Yeah.
Oh, can I expense this?
Tell me about your affiliation, passion with the Carlton Footy Club. You're a director?
Yep.
How long have you been on the board? And tell me about your love of Carlton Footy Club.
I've been on the board 10 years. My father and Uncle Bruce both life members of the footy club. Dad started, I think, scouting for Carlton in the late 70s. He went to work with looking after the rooms of David Parkin in 81. And I've been running around that footy club, me and my brothers and my sister, since I was a little tacker. So, Saturday afternoon, like most families, was we went and watched Carlton play every week. I don't think Dad missed a game for 30 years.
Yeah, wow.
And when he worked at the club, I think he was doing 160 days a year at the footy club. He was there for every session as a volunteer. So he spent a lot of time there, and if we won on a Saturday, we got donuts, and if we lost, we got none. So it's always been a big part of my life. I love the footy club. Footy's such a big part of Melbourne, and I've got 2 years to run on the board. We have 12-year terms, and hopefully in the next 2 years we can see a bit of on-field success, because off-field we're doing a tremendous job.
It's an amazing stadium, the renovation that they've done there.
Yep.
I was always surprised that the AFL didn't tip some more money into that ground, particularly for the smaller ticketed games like North Melbourne versus Freo and all that sort of stuff. But they play a lot of AFLW over there. And,
It's now, it is a home of AFLW.
Yeah.
It's still small. It's 25,000 seat stadium. You still got at the back of the house, you got to fix up all those sort of things. It's obviously too small for Carlton. Even, if we're getting 25,000 to a game, Carlton, we've got a problem. Doesn't matter who we play.
Yeah.
I think we average 45,000, something like that. And the best ground to watch footy at, but it's just too small.
Too small, yeah. I had some mates playing at Carlton and another mate playing at Fitzroy, and I used to love going there and watching them play footy because you could see so much of the game. Matho, tell me, what can you glean? What are the parallels you can glean from, elite teams and sporting teams like Carlton and business?
Well, football and business, I think, are a little bit different. Football is a very emotional business. As someone says, a lot of smart blokes leave their brains at the door when they go into a footy club. And you look at it, you watch people there, they go in, they watch a footy, mild-mannered accountant, he goes in, the ball gets bounced and he goes off his nana. So I think they're a little bit different. And of course, the purpose of business is fundamentally to make money. You obviously got to look after staff and all that sort of stuff, but I think football clubs are run slightly different. But again, it's still people, you got obviously you need players, you need coaching, but you need a very strong off-field. And I think you certainly will need a strong off-field before you get on-field success. Yeah. You need money to buy facilities or things. You need a very strong administration, good presidents, good board stability. So I think they're not quite the same as business as such, but the parallels are there, that it's people.
Yeah.
I think football clubs certainly now are probably getting some part on the social issues, getting a bit away from their knitting. I personally watch the Carlton footy. I support the Carlton footy club. We're involved just to win. I just want to win games of football.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the peripheral stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. Although Carlton do some things that, obviously due to our proximity to the ground. I'm an Essendon supporter, a passionate Bomber supporter. But due to our proximity to the ground, and always seeing the Carlton players and the Carlton admin in the coffee shop downstairs. But one of the things that I think they do really well is this thing they do which is Carlton in Business.
Yeah.
And they bring sometimes they get 1,000, 1,200 people to those events. So obviously they're doing that pretty well. Yeah,
that was set up by Mark Legier, our last president. That's his baby. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. We've got 170 members who pay 10 grand a year or something like that, half of which aren't Carlton supporters.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about networking and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of them you go to, they're just piss-ups.
Yeah.
Where this does tens of millions of dollars of business within each other. We've invested in it. We've got 4 full-time resources in there. So, it's all right. Everyone likes the social part, but at the end of the day, we're there to improve our businesses. So, it's a fantastic concept. We're leading the way, and now, of course, everyone's trying to copy it. But Carlton does have a very strong corporate culture, obviously.
Yeah, no doubt. When you're looking at investing from a family office perspective, what are the triggers or the levers that you look at to say, yeah, that's a good business and that's, for want of a better term, worth a punt?
Well, we do it all. When you become, when we had our glass business, most of our assets were concentrated in glass. Like we had a few things, but fundamentally the family wealth was tied up in the glass business. We're now, when you run a family office, you get an opportunity to invest in lots of things. We've invested in, we've got a property focus. We have, investments in private businesses. Obviously, we've got a normal share portfolio. I think the one thing I do take out of it, when you have like a general business, the golden goose always produces another egg. So when we invest, we're not massive risk takers because if I blow it up, I blow it up for generations to go, and we don't have a cash flow generating business. So there are some things we will, prepared to take more risk on, and if it goes pear shaped, well, it goes pear shaped. I can afford to lose it, but I never want to make a decision, put all the chips in on anything that could possibly blow the whole family up. So we don't have a huge amount of debt. Our projects obviously we do, but. We like to have a balance. It's a bit like life. It's just a balance in everything. I had things that have gone completely pear-shaped and cost us, lots of money. But things have gone well, which have compensated for that. So I think you just need balance in what you invest in. We don't have any structure. We're not like a superannuation fund where you have X amount in cash, X amount in profit, property, X amount in everything. It's just a very ad hoc. If there's a buck in it, I tend to invest in it.
And do you make that decision solely, or do you have a board, or
No, it's just fun. I have some key people that I consult with. Any big decision, obviously, I would run past Dad. But no, we don't. I don't have a formal board structure as such.
Is your brother and sister involved in the business?
My sister got her own little business, a clothing business, and my two brothers just sort of help out around the office and that sort of stuff because they never, when they left the business, they came into DMS fundamentally straight out of school. So when we sold, they sort of just do their own thing a bit.
Yeah, right, fair enough. You're a father. You talk about having a good spread across life. As a father, you're a father of two teenage kids.
Yep.
In high school, what are they? Year 10 and year 12 or something like that.
16 and 14.
16 and 14. As our kids get to that point of, I've got a 15-year-old and two 20-year-olds, but as they get to that point of young adolescence, you start to think about. You compare, how you grew up and the lessons that your father had taught you, and I do the same thing. What do you think? How's your thought process around with your kids and what they might want to do post high school?
Well, they don't actually have any idea themselves, I don't think, just yet. They haven't really, the penny hasn't dropped which way they want to go. Like any kids, they change their mind about 10 times. I always say to them, school doesn't define them. I wasn't a strong student, and similarly, Dad and Bruce and that, they all left school at 14 or 13 or whatever they did. So they will work that out when the time's right. At the moment, I just want them to be happy and enjoy school, and life will take lots of twists and turns by the time they get to that age. So. I hope at some point that maybe they can come back to the family at some stage in the business part. Now, whether one wants to be an architect or go into property or who knows. Yeah. But at this stage, I just let them go and they'll work it out themselves. They've got opportunities that they've had a different childhood to what I did.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, well, they're just both different. I for the first 17 years of my life, or 18 years of life, we were just a normal working middle class family. Dad did 2 jobs. He worked during the day as a glazing super, and then every night would come home and make fish tanks to midnight.
Make fish tanks?
Fish tanks.
Yeah.
Because I think his last year was on $27,000. I think he said his wage was as a glazier, and he probably made more money making fish tanks out in the shed. So he'd come home, we'd go to cricket, and dinner he would go out to the shed and make fish tanks.
Yeah, right.
And
that was his first little side hustle.
Yeah, and we had obviously coming out of the glass industry, and that's how we got, you could afford to buy us cricket bats and all the stuff that we did. We had, we didn't want for anything in our childhood, but it was different. I went to the local high school. We didn't have we're just a normal family. So, and those values are still probably instilled in me today. Dad's childhood, it's even amazing. Like when Dad and Bruce and they had another brother, Uncle Ken who was killed. But Dad's father came back from the war and then came back and contracted polio and was dead within 6 months. So Gran had 3 kids under 5, no husband, and they were in a pickle.
Yeah.
So those values, those experiences of then today still drive Dad the way he is today. You know, he doesn't, he often talks about, the old, if you've never had ice cream, you don't miss it. So I think your childhood has an enormous bearing on what you do later in life. So I always say I'm the son of a glazier, my joke is, but one, people think you got money, they think differently of you. And it's also that recognition that we come from just very normal middle-class family. Some people assume you had a wealthy upbringing. It's quite to the contrary.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
And if I get out of whack, I do get a whack. The old man will bring you back into line. If things get a bit flashy, you cop it.
Yeah, I could imagine. I just find it intriguing that 2 brothers from just humble beginnings both became incredibly successful.
Yeah. It's actually very unique because whilst they're very close, the brothers are close. Bruce never went into glass and we never went into pubs.
Yeah.
We do things together. Outside of those 2, but they independently built these amazing businesses themselves with no help from anyone.
It's just amazing that they both. I mean, I've never met your Uncle Bruce. I've met Bruce Jr.
Yep.
And I went on your uncle's boat for Ox's birthday, which was incredible for a boy from Pascoe to go on a 3 or 4 story catamaran, which is unbelievable. But I find it incredible, and I didn't know those stories that you've just shared with me. Before we finish up, I want to talk about your passion for the thoroughbred.
Yep.
Earlier on, you told me, Jace, I go on to things that are going to make a buck. And
they certainly don't.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
But I don't bet.
Yeah, I know. I find that incredible.
Yeah, so it's bad enough owning them, let alone punting on them. But I enjoy the social part of it. I own it with some friends of mine invariably, and that's what I really enjoy, the part of the racing horses. And we've been lucky to have a bit of success over the years. You need a bit of success because, for every good one, there's 10 low lights. Yeah. Well, not low. Disappointments. Yeah. There's always something wrong with them. And it's always the good ones.
Yeah.
But it's just a passion I have. But it's more built around the friendships that I have within those horses. Some of my best mates I own horses with, and it's like anything. You talk about them and what's going to happen, where they're going, and hopefully you get the chocolates.
Yeah. Before we go, Matho, tell me, what is it like, the legacy of carrying the Matheson surname? Is that being challenging at times?
No, I'm very proud of the Matheson surname. Yeah. Incredibly, what they've achieved, the 2 brothers. I get asked if my Bruce is my father probably every second day, which I wish Dad's never been one to chase the limelight, and but I know I'm very proud of our family name. So no, I don't. I see it as an advantage, really.
Yeah, I guess my point, and I appreciate your response. My point was, do you feel like sometimes you've got something to live up to?
No. My greatest fear is blowing it. I think when you do, because it's like everything, that old thing, Dad had the hard job, he made the first million. My job is to obviously grow it and hold on to it, because as you go further down it's like any of these family businesses, you go down the triangle, there's more mouths to feed. You'll have, I won't say interlopers, but then everyone gets married, everyone's got different needs. It's succession planning in any family is probably the hardest thing. It's probably the hardest for the 3rd generation onwards, as I would say. At the moment, Dad's still, whilst he's not actively involved in the business, and be honest, wouldn't even know what he owns.
Yeah.
I've full, I'm allowed to, I tell him obviously as a courtesy, but he's still around, but it's probably the third generation where things start to get a bit tricky, and how you manage that transition, because, you know, at some point someone's going to have to take over from me, albeit I think it'll be a long time in coming, I hope, touch wood. But that's probably the biggest issue that I'm nervous about. And the fact is, I was talking to my wife the other day about that the pressure goes, you know, everyone in the family, when things are going well and you have it, you know, you make a good investment, you make a few bucks, everyone's happy. But they all remind you of the ones that go shit house as well.
Absolutely. So
that's the thing that keeps me awake probably the most at night is things going wrong.
Yeah. Before we finish up, if you were to give one tip to a budding entrepreneur or someone about to go into business, what is the one thing that you think has been the thing that's underpinned the success of where you and your family are at today?
Just find what you're good at, you know, and then when you find that thing, you've got to work your ass off, you know. You know, I think that would be the one thing I say. You know, you got to, and that's a bit like my children. So just find something. If you find something you're good at, and you'll be successful invariably. Yeah. But you've got to really work hard. Yeah. You know, you've got to be prepared to take a risk, obviously, if you, which we all do when we start off. But just find the thing that you're passionate about. You know, if you don't like doing it, you won't be successful at it. So. And it's amazing where life sort of takes you. You know, if Dad hadn't been made redundant, we would never have built DMS. It was just such upon him. It's amazing. It's another story, and it's countless and countless stories you hear. Through adversity comes success. And absolutely. Yeah, and there's nothing. I say to my youngest son, Tom, nothing worth achieving was ever easy. And it's very similar to what you're saying. You find out what you're good at, work your ass off, take a couple of risks and stick to your knitting. Yep. Craig Mathieson, thanks for your time. Thank you, Jace. Wonderful. Very good. Thank you.